Okay. We finished chapter 14 last day. We had a couple of verses left undone. And then we went straight on to Revelation chapter 15. Revelation chapter 15 is the shortest chapter in the book of Revelation. It only have 8 verses, but there were 2 events that John was reporting on. The first event was the 7 angels with the 7 vials, and the second was the tribulation saints in the presence of God. So last day we saw the 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, and then we saw that repeated again, and the temple was open in heaven, and we said there is a temple in heaven, and there where God is worship and sacrifice is being made. And the 7 angels came out of the temple having the last plagues. So we asked the question, where did they get the last plagues from? And the other verse said that the 7 angels received the 7 last plagues from one of the 4 creatures, which is before the throne of God. So the 7 last plagues were angels. They were dressed in white linen and golden sash, and they came out of the temple having these bowls in their hands, and they were ready to pour out this judgment upon the face of the earth. And that is where we stopped last day. So today we will go straight into Revelation chapter 16, verse 1. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the 7 angels, go your way and pour out the vials. I have bowls in brackets of the wrath of God upon the earth. So let us go through a couple of things here. One of the first things we would look at is the great voice out of the temple in heaven. We will come back to that in a minute. Let's go on to the second, the vial. Now, in Revelation chapter 15, verse 1, it said the 7 angels having the 7 last plagues. In verse 5, the temple was open in heaven, and the 7 angels having the 7 plagues. And in verse 7, and one of the 4 beasts gave unto the 7 angels 7 golden vials full of the wrath of God. What am I saying? If you read the King James Version, the title or the description of those vials will be the 7 last plagues. It will be the golden vials. It will be the plagues. It will be the vials. And in the NIV version of the Bible, they would say the 7 bowls. So whether it is the 7 vials, the 7 last plagues, or the 7 bowls, it's just a different name for the last series of 7 judgments. The different names for the last series of 7 judgments. So in the King James Version, we have the vials, we have the 7 last plagues, we have the golden vials. It means the same thing. It contains the wrath of God. So the contents of these bowls or vials contains the wrath of God. So you'll ask the question, what does the word wrath mean? It means fierce anger, indignation, vengeance, or punishment. The longer definition of the word wrath is an emotional response to perceived wrong and injustice. Now, God's wrath is always holy and justified. Man's wrath is rarely justified and never holy. So the 7 bowls contains the fierceness of God, the fierce anger of God, and it's more like vengeance of God. And it is directed to the earth and the citizens of the earth. So these 7 punishments or plagues, and the word plagues mean a widespread calamity, a widespread. It could be worldwide. It could be concentrated in a particular area, but it's a widespread calamity. It is directed towards the earth and the people living on the earth. Now, let us go back to the voice that came out of the temple. You'll remember in Revelation chapter 15, verse 8, the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. And no man was able to enter into the temple till the seven plagues of the seven angels were fulfilled. So in this verse, in the last verse of Revelation chapter 15, the temple in heaven was filled with the glory of God from his power, full of smoke. No man was able to enter into the temple. So you will ask the question, were there men in heaven at that time? And the answer is yes, because there were 24 elders, which represents the Old Testament saints and the New Testament saints. However, when you studied Revelation chapter 4 and 5, you see that there were angels in the temple. There were special angels in the temple. There were mighty angels in the temple. And there were 4 living creatures. So the question is, does this mean that the angels were not able to enter into the temple? We do not have that answer. Does it mean that the 4 living creatures were not able to enter into the temple? We don't have that answer. Those 4 living creatures, we first saw them in the book of Isaiah. That is thousands of years ago. And in the book of Isaiah, they were crying before God, holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty, which was and which is to come. And in the book of Revelation, they were still worshiping in that manner. And they have seen God in all of his glory and all of his anger. And they were there in the presence of God. So the question is, are those 4 creatures able to enter into the temple? I don't know. But it says no man was able to enter into the temple. This means that this 7 judgments will go on, or will proceed without interruption. Nobody is going to stop this. Nobody is going to interrupt this. This is God having vengeance on the earthlings on the earth at this time during the tribulation period. Now it says until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled. The question is this the last plagues on the face of the earth? During the tribulation period, yes, this will be the last plagues during the tribulation period. However, during the millennial kingdom, there will be 1 more plague that will take place. Now, I am just giving you a little hint as to what will take place during the millennial kingdom, just enough to keep you excited. And this verse, Zechariah chapter 14, verse 18, I would recommend that you read Zechariah chapter 14 to get a heads up on the millennial kingdom. During the millennial kingdom, Jesus will be ruling from Jerusalem, and every nation under the sun will have to make a trip to Jerusalem during the Feast of Tabernacle. And the Feast of Tabernacle is called the Feast of Booth. It is called the Feast of Sukkot in Hebrew, and it just means the Feast of Tabernacle. And every nation under the sun will have to attend this feast once a year. And if the nation do not, or if they don't send representatives to Jerusalem during that year, during the Feast of Tabernacle, they will have no rain. And God called it the plague. Now in Zechariah chapter 14, verse 18, and if the family of Egypt, God is using an example, go not up and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague, wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen that come not to keep the feast of the tabernacle. So during the tribulation period, the nation that do not send representatives to Jerusalem to worship during the Feast of the Tabernacle, they will have no rain. So that will be another plague that will take place on the face of the earth during the millennial kingdom. But the 7 last plagues is contained in the 7-year period of tribulation. So let's go on. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth. And I have the word land in brackets. So this vial was poured out on the land. And there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worship his image. So the first angel poured out his vial upon the land. A grievous and a noisome and grievous sore. This grievous and noisome sore, I was about to make some slides on the grievous, noisome and grievous sore, but I said some of you might have to have dinner later and you do not want to see those slides. I was disgusted by it, so I didn't make those slides. However, the other versions of the Bible say they are malignant sores, and the sores will just get bigger and deeper and dirtier and dirtier. And I am using nice words. But these sores will not fall on everybody, only on the men which have the mark of the beast, and upon them who worship the image. So you say, who are the people at this point who will escape these swords? You still have some of the 144,000 Jews that are sealed with their father's name on their forehead at this period of the tribulation period. Now remember, we were talking about the first half of the tribulation period, and then we said God was showing us things that will happen at the middle of the tribulation period in order for us to understand the last half of the tribulation period. Example, the temple being rebuilt in Jerusalem, the 2 witnesses, the beast, the creature with the red dragon, the false prophet. The Lord explained all of that to us between Revelation chapter 11 and chapter 16. So we said that we are in the middle of the tribulation period. So this will be about 3.5, 4 years into the tribulation period, or 4.5 years into the tribulation period. So you still have the 144,000. You still have people deciding to follow Jesus, and you still have a testimony of Jesus. There will still be people hiding in caves, catacombs, countryside, where the mark of the beast is probably wouldn't reach at that point in time. And everybody who do not receive the mark at that point in time, they will escape. Only the men who have the mark of the beast and who worship his image will get these noisome and grievous swords. So let's continue. Now look at this. If any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark on their forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone. So this verse, we studied this verse in Revelation chapter 14. If you receive the mark, if you worship the beast, if you receive the mark on your forehead or your hands, if you worship his image, you will drink of the wrath of God. And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. So this is for eternity. They will suffer and they will be tormented for eternity. However, their torment and suffering will start during the tribulation period, and it will continue throughout eternity. It says the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever, and they rest not day nor night. But they will be tormented while they are on earth also. They receive the mark of the beast, they worship his image, they worship the beast, they will be tormented with grievous and noisome sores at the point when they are still on earth. Now look at this other verse. And it was commanded them. This is the locust we are talking about. We are going back to Revelation chapter 9. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God on their forehead. So the people on earth, except for the 144,000, will be tormented with the locust. So torment starts during the tribulation period and continues throughout eternity for those who receive the mark. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. This is the first time we see the people on earth begin to suffer during the tribulation period. Though this is for those who were not sealed by God. This is for those who will be taking the mark of the beast or worshiping the beast. So the point I'm trying to get to you here is, you will, if you take the mark, if you worship the beast, if you worship his image, you will be tormented for eternity. But it will start while you are alive on the face of the earth. That's the point I'm driving at. Let's continue. And the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man. And every living soul died in the sea. Now, when it said every living soul died in the sea, it does not mean that the fish and the whale and the lobster and the crustacean, that they have souls. It means that everything that had life in the sea died. But I want to draw your attention to the type of blood. The sea became the blood of a dead man. So then you have to ask the question, what is the blood of a dead man looks like? Now, when somebody dies, and let's say they have no open wound, the blood will settle in the lowest part of the body. So if they die lying on their back, the blood will be at the back of the body, on above the skin, or within the skin, but the lower part of the body. If they die face down, the blood will be on their face and the front part, the frontal part of the body. If they die with a wound and the blood spill on the ground, before long, the blood will coagulate, or it will clot, and it will become mushy, and it will become soft. So if the sea is covered with the blood of a dead man, what will happen in the ocean? The top of the water in the ocean will become mushy, and it will become thick. And then the oxygen from the water will be depleted, because no oxygen is getting into the water, and the living creatures in the water will be breathing out the oxygen that is in the water. So before long, there will be no oxygen in the water, and every living creature in the ocean will die. Now, in the blood, 55% of the blood is what we call plasma. 92% of plasma is water, and the rest would be probably protein and other nutrients. So if the blood is floating on the ocean, that 92% of that water will evaporate. Now, blood is thicker than water, so the blood is going to sink into the water, and it will just stifle all the life. So this is why the Bible says the blood in the ocean will be like the blood of a dead man, and every living creature will die. Okay, give me a second. I lost my spot. All right. Let's go on. Now look at this. This is not the first time the ocean became blood. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood, and a third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and a third part of the ship were destroyed. Now this happened earlier in the tribulation period, where only 1/3 part of the sea became blood, and there was destruction with the creatures and everything that, and 1/3 of the creatures died, and 1/3 of the ship were destroyed, and so on and so forth. However, this was not the blood of a dead man. This was just blood. And this happened earlier in the tribulation period, probably the first half. And only 1/3 of the sea was turned to blood at that time. In in chapter 16, all of the sea will turn to blood, and all of the sea will turn to the blood of a dead man. Let's go on. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the river and the fountain of water, and they became blood. So now we have the rivers, and we have the fountains of waters, and we have the springs, and we have the underground springs, the channels, whatever you have. So the ocean is blood, and now the fresh water is blood. All of the fresh water is blood. And I heard the angel of water say, "Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and was and shall be, because thou hast judged thus." So we learn that there is an angel of water, not a god of water, but an angel of water. And every time the angels look at the judgment of God, they see it one way. Thou art righteous, O God. That is how the angels see God's judgment. Let's continue. Revelation chapter 16, verse 6. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. So the angel is saying that they shed blood. So now God gave them blood to drink. And I believe this is literal. I believe that God will give them blood to drink because they have shed the blood of the saints and of the prophets. So let's see, when did they started shedding the blood of the saints and of the prophets? This is Genesis chapter 4, verse 10 and 11. And he said, "What hast thou done?" This is the case with Cain and Abel. God was talking to Cain. "What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood cry unto me from the earth. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which had opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand." So the first righteous blood that was spilled on the face of the earth was Cain, and was Abel. Sorry, it was Abel. And now God is going to take vengeance of them that dwell on the earth for all the righteous blood that was spilled, starting from Abel and all the saints and all the prophets. Maybe I should say all the prophets first, and then all the saints. And all of their blood is being venged by God. And I heard another out of the altar say, another what? Another angel out of the altar say, "Even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are thy judgment." I told you the angels will always see God's judgment as true and righteous, because it's God's judgment. It can only be true and righteous. But why did this angel said that? First of all, we have to understand which altar are we talking about. Remember, in heaven, there is a temple, and that temple is a mirror to the temple on earth. So there are two altars in the temple in heaven. we have the golden altar. And you remember I showed you the diagram. We have the golden altar of incense. On this altar, they would offer up the prayers of the saints with incense. And this prayers of the saints with incense will go up to the nostrils of God. Therefore, this altar is right outside the Holy of Holies. That's not the altar we are talking about. We are talking about the altar of sacrifice. When you enter into the temple compound through the gates, the first altar you are going to meet is a big altar on the outside where they would sacrifice the sheep and the goat and the bullocks and stuff like that. And that is the altar of sacrifice. This angel called out from the altar of sacrifice and saying to God, even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are thy judgment. Now, why would this angel call out to God and say, true and righteous are thy judgment? Why would this angel join in the praise of God? And this is the angel from the altar of sacrifice. Now we will be going back again in the book of Revelation chapter 6, verse 9. The first time we saw this altar is verse 9 of Revelation chapter 6. What did we see? And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them which were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. So under this altar in heaven are the souls of the tribulation saints. This is the first time in the book of Revelation that we saw the tribulation saints or the souls of the tribulation saints. And they were told, or in fact, they cried out to God, and they said in Revelation chapter 6, verse 10, and they cried out with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? So the souls under this altar were crying out to God, when will you avenge our blood? And you remember God gave them white robes and told them, rest a while, because there are many more of your brethren who have to be killed just like you were. So you rest a while until this is accomplished. So they cried out for vengeance in Revelation chapter 6, verse 10, and they received their vengeance in Revelation chapter 16, verse 4 and 5 and 6, where God will give the people living on earth, God will give them blood to drink because they shed the blood of the saints and of the prophets, starting from Abel. Starting from Abel. Their prayers will be answered in Revelation chapter 16, verse 4. Let's continue. Now, this is not the first time that the earth experienced blood on the earth. And Moses and Aaron did so as the Lord commanded. And he lifted up the rod and smote the water that were in the river, in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants. And all the water that were in the river were turned into blood. So this happened before on earth. Now it is happening in a wider scale. It happened in Egypt, and this was the first plague, first of the 10 plagues in the land of Egypt. The blood turned to water, and the water turned to blood, sorry. So they had no water to drink except for those in the land of Goshen, where the Jewish people were. And the fish that were in the river died, and the river stunk, and the Egyptians could not drink of the water of the river, and there were blood throughout all the land of Egypt. So this happened before, except in this situation during the tribulation period, during the last half of the tribulation period, all of the water will turn to blood, and man will be forced to drink the blood. Now remember, we have the first seal where we have the noisome and grievous sores, the malignant sores. The second bowl, we have the ocean turned to the blood of dead man, and now we have all the water on the fresh water turned to blood, and men are forced to drink blood in order to survive during that period of time. Some people believe that because God is forcing humanity to drink blood, this will have to be close to the end of the tribulation period. I am not sure. All I know is the last half of the tribulation period. Let's go on. Saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory. Now, this verse, I take you back to Revelation chapter 14, verse 7. And this is what this verse is. Saying with a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment is come. Worship him that made heaven, the earth, the sea, and the fountains of water. So in Revelation chapter 14, we were told to worship God, who made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of water. Guess what? The earth, the sea, and the fountains of water is being destroyed by God in Revelation chapter 16. Let's go on. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, which had the power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him the glory. So at this point in Revelation chapter 16, verse 9, men blaspheme the name of God because they acknowledge that he has the power over the plagues. And you'll remember in the first verse we said, these plagues come from God. God is punishing the people living on earth for what they have done in the past. So the men acknowledge that these plagues come from God, but they will not repent and give him the glory. But let us talk about the sun for a second. Two things we should talk about. The judgment of the sun and the blaspheming of the name of God. Now, in order for men to be scorched with fire from the sun, the ozone layer have to be depleted around the earth. We are protected from the sun's ray by the ozone layer. That will be depleted in order for the sun rays to penetrate and really hurt human beings. Now, again, I was about to make a slide on burns. There are first-degree burns, there are second-degree burns, there are third-degree burns. We said that the first-degree burn is when your skin gets red and you say you get sunburn and it might swell a little bit and so on and so on. That's first-degree burn. Then you have second-degree burn when the sun penetrates the skin, break the skin, and you go down a layer or two. And then you will get a swelling, you will get water coming out of the burn. That is second-degree burn. Now, the third-degree burn is when the heat or the fire penetrates through the skin, get into the flesh, get into the muscles, or sometimes get into the bone. That is third-degree burn. We are talking about third-degree burn. Men will be scorched with fire. Men will have great heat upon the face because of the sun. I did not want to make that slide because it's too disgusting also. Now, men will blaspheme God because of the heat. And they know that this is coming from God himself. But let's see how the sun relates to the tribulation period. Look at Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. And I beheld, and when he opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. So if the sun lost its light for a period of time, we're going to have a cold a winter on earth. So the sun was affected under the sixth seal. Now look at Revelation chapter 8, verse 12. And the fourth angel sounded, and a third part of the sun was smitten, and a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars, so that the third part of them were darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. So we said that we'll have 8 hours of daylight at that time, and we'll have what, 16 hours of night during that period, and the night will be extremely dark. It will be extremely cold. So this is 2 instances where the sun will be affected during the tribulation period. And the third is in Revelation chapter 16, when the strength of the sun rays or the sun heat will be strengthened enough to burn man. So let's talk about blasphemy for a second. Now, they started to blaspheme God, although they knew that these judgments came from God, and they refused to give him the glory. Now, in Leviticus chapter 24, verse 14 through 16, this is what happens to somebody when they blaspheme God. Moses was talking to the congregation. One of the guys, they blasphemed God. The other people heard it. They came to Moses, and Moses said, let me put him in a little cage here, and we will deal with him later. Let me talk to God. This is what the results were. Chapter 14, bring forth him that cursed outside without the camp, and let all that heard him lay their hands upon his head, and let all the congregation stone him. And he that blasphemed the name of the Lord, he shall surely be put to death, and all the congregation shall certainly stone him, as well as the stranger, as he that is born in the land, when he blasphemed the name of the Lord, shall be put to death. So if you blaspheme the name of the Lord in the Old Testament, you shall be stoned to death. These people were blaspheming the name of God because of the heat and because of the third-degree burns. They were blaspheming the name of the Lord. According to the law, they should be stoned to death. Let's go on. And the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was filled with darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pain and their sores, and repented not of their deed. So the fifth seal was poured upon the seat of the beast. And upon his kingdom. And men gnawed their tongues for pain. Why were they having pains at that time? Because they had third-degree burns. And because of their pain and their sores. When did they receive the sores? When the first bowl was poured out upon the earth. This is telling us that the judgments overlap each other as we go along. In the last half of the tribulation period, the Bible never tells us how long the sea will remain blood. The Bible never tells us how long the fresh water will remain blood. And how long they're going to have the sores. From the first bowl, this is the fifth bowl. So this would last for a long period of time. These sores just will not heal. So their pain will be continuous. But they blaspheme God because of that. So this bowl judgment is darkness upon the seat of the beast. This is not the first time this happened. The ninth plague in Egypt, Exodus chapter 21, 22, and 23, and Moses stretched forth his hand towards heaven, and there was a thick darkness in the land of Egypt for 3 days. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwelling. So this is not the first time that darkness will be upon the face of the earth as a plague. However, the darkness was poured out upon the seat of the beast. Now, if you remember in around chapter 11, we talked about the seed that the beast received from the dragon. The seed of the Antichrist was given unto him from the dragon himself. So we say, what was it? What is the seed of the dragon? The seed of the dragon is the revived Roman Empire. That is the seed of Satan, of the Antichrist. It was given to him by Satan. So the darkness will be upon the seat or the throne of the Antichrist, or it will be upon the kingdom of the Antichrist. So we have the nations that comprise of the revived Roman Empire. They will all be in darkness. And then remember, we saw the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. And the 10 horns represents 10 kings who do not have a kingdom at this time, but they will give their power to the beast also. So that will become part of his kingdom. So that part of the kingdom will also be in darkness. And some Bible teachers tells us that this is metaphoric because God is showing, or God is using this as an object lesson, because the kingdom of the Antichrist is in darkness. So God is showing them that this kingdom is completely dark, or is literally dark. So there was darkness upon the face of the earth before, and now darkness will be upon the kingdom of the Antichrist. Let's go on. And the 6th seal was poured out, and the 6th angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. So the 6th vial is poured out on the great river Euphrates, and the river is dried up. Now, let me go back for a second. If you can see this faded picture, this is a picture of the river Euphrates today. This is how much water that is missing from the river Euphrates. Let me get my pen. 1 second. Now this here is the present water line, but the water line should be over here. The water line should be all the way to the back here, but the water is disappearing in the river Euphrates. Throughout the river Euphrates, the water is disappearing. Now, this faded picture again, you would see the river Euphrates, and I showed you this one before. This is the river Euphrates, and I will show you some more pictures of what is happening. But before I do that, let's go on. Let's go on with this one. And the 6th angel sounded, and I heard the voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before God. Remember, we just talked about that. Saying to the 6 angels, which had the 6th angels, which had their trumpet, loose the 4 angels which abound in the great river Euphrates, and the 4 angels were loose, which were prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year, for to slay 1/3 part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. This was in Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 through 16. And we saw the river Euphrates came into action during Revelation chapter 9. And we said today there are 4 angels that are bound in the river Euphrates, and they will be loose during the tribulation period. And they are there for a particular purpose, and they are there to bring down the army into the battle of Armageddon. So in Revelation chapter 16, the river will be completely dried up. So let me show you some of these pictures. This picture here, the one on the right, is what the river Euphrates used to be like. You will see the water line on both sides. You see there's a lot of water. Now look at this picture on my right, and you will see how the water level is diminished. This island actually appears in the middle of the river. That is because the water is being dried up as we speak. Now look at this one. Let me enlarge on this for a second. This here is in 2002, and how much water the river Euphrates had at that time. This year is 2022, and how much less water we have in 2022. This here is the water line today. This here is where the water line is supposed to be. Again, the river Euphrates is drying up as we speak. The countries that need the water from the river Euphrates, like Iran, Iraq, and those countries, their water is diminished by 50%. So the river Euphrates is already drying up as we speak. That will completely dry up during the tribulation period. Now, this picture is interesting. And we have here, this here is the dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. This here is the beast, like a leopard. And this here is a false prophet. You will notice that there are 3 frogs coming out of their mouths. And you got this one, 3 frogs coming out of their mouth. Let's go on. Revelation chapter 16, verse 13. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. The word, the mouth, is used 3 times. That means it is very important. It is very important to know that. Secondly, look at where the 3 unclean spirits came out from their mouth. That means that they had power. They had a silver tongue. They would talk to people and they would just listen, because they were empowered by these demons that was in their mouth. Let's go on. For they are spirits of devils. They are called seducing spirits, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole earth, to gather them to the battle of the great day of the Lord. So you must remember that the kingdom of the Antichrist was the nations that formed the revived Roman Empire. Then we have the 10 kings that joined with the Antichrist. But in this instant, you have to get the support of all the kings of the earth and the whole earth to gather them to the great battle of the Lord. They needed special help, and these demons or these spirits of devils gave them that power to win people over and bring them to the battle of Armageddon. Now look at verse 16. And he gathered them together. One second. Yes.
Revelation 15.
And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. So the purpose of these 3 spirits or demons was to gather the kings of the earth in the valley of Megiddo to fight against the Lord. Now, in verse 15, behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keep his garment, lest he walk naked, and they see his shame. This is the second time in the book of Revelation that Jesus is saying, I come as a thief. You remember we discussed this before, and we said Jesus coming as a thief doesn't mean he's going to dress up as a thief, but it talks about the unexpected and swiftness of his coming. And you will notice that whenever they talk about Jesus coming as a thief, it talks about your garment, and it talks about walking naked, and it talks about people seeing your shame. And I told you this is a Jewish idiom and it originated in the temple in Jerusalem. When the priests who's supposed to be on guard, when they fall asleep, the high priest will walk around in the night and light their clothes on fire. And when they light the clothes on fire and the priest will jump up, he will rip off his clothes and run away. So this is why it talks about keeping your garment, walking naked, and people seeing your shame. This was the first time it was mentioned. Remember therefore how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. If therefore thou shalt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know the hour I will come upon thee. This verse in Revelation chapter 16, verse 15, it is completely out of context. Jesus just wanted to remind you, hey, I am coming suddenly, be prepared. I am coming suddenly, be prepared. So at this point, I would stop here for tonight. We will finish chapter 16 next day, and we will move on to Revelation chapter 17. So at this point, I want to thank you all for joining today, and I'll turn back to Pastor Michael.